Hi everybody, welcome to our last literacy lesson before the half term. Make sure you've got your pen, pencil, you know everything that you need, and then we'll get straight away started on our vocab blast. So we're recapping the words that we learnt yesterday. Let's start off with this one. What is this a picture of? They are eggs of a frog surrounded by jelly. But what do we call the eggs of a frog? Fantastic, well remembered, it's frog spawn. And now I've got a picture of a fish and I've circled the area of the fish that I'm talking about and thinking about. It's got these things on it that help it to breathe underwater. What are those things called? Gills, well done. What do we have in our chest to help us breathe? Lungs, fantastic. Well done, there's a picture of lungs. And the last thing, this is something in food that's essential for us to live and grow. That's why I've got a picture of lots of different foods. Something in food that's essential for us to live and grow. We call these nutrients. Brilliant. So we've got frog spawn, gills, lungs, and nutrients. Can we use those words in some sentences? Let's give it a try. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the sentence and say that there's a gap missing in each sentence. You need to decide which word fits in that gap. Let's go. The from an apple are very good for you. Is it the frog spawn from an apple, the nutrients from an apple, the lungs from an apple, or the gills from an apple? Which one do you think it is? Fantastic, it's the nutrients. The nutrients from an apple are very good for you. Next sentence, this one's got two gaps in it. Humans need to breathe, but fish need What do you think those words are? Humans need to breathe. Fantastic, humans need lungs to breathe, but fish need gills, well done. Which means the last one, I noticed some frog spawn on top of the pond. I noticed some frog spawn on top of the pond. Well done, year 2, what a fantastic start. Now what I want you to do is have a think back to yesterday. Maybe you've still got this that you did in yesterday's lesson. The life cycle of a frog. What is it? The life cycle of a frog. Fantastic. So can we remember what happens in the life cycle of a frog? What happens first? Which picture am I going to put first? Fantastic. The frog spawn is the first part of the life cycle of a frog. It starts as an egg as frog spawn. What's this called? Frog spawn. Brilliant. After the frog spawn hatches, what hatches out of it? Brilliant, a tadpole. So I'm going to get the picture of my tadpole and that goes next. So a frog spawn is what happens first, and then the frog spawn hatches into tadpoles. After the tadpole starts to grow, what does it get first? Fantastic, it starts to grow legs. It becomes a tadpole with legs. After it's been a tadpole with legs, it grows a little bit more. And what does it become? A froglet, well remembered. And eventually it turns into an adult frog. So first, the frog starts as frog spawn. Then it hatches into a tadpole. Then the tadpole starts to grow legs. And then it becomes a froglet. Eventually it loses its tail and becomes a frog. Well done. Today we're going to be learning some more information about each stage of the life cycle. And I'm going to read that information to you. So what I need you to do is get your best listening ears on, and I want you to think whilst I'm reading, why do the changes happen? What are the changes that happen to the tadpole as it grows up, and why do they happen? Why are they important? Ready? A frog begins life as an egg. A female frog lays lots of eggs at one time in the pond. The eggs float on the water in a jelly cluster. We call the eggs frog spawn when they are together. The eggs will soon hatch into tadpoles. Fantastic. So I want you to think about what the change is that happens in this bit of information that we have just read. What is the change that happens? Tell somebody in the room. Fantastic. So the eggs are laid, which will eventually become tadpoles. It's not happened yet, but the eggs are floating on the water. I'm going to cover up some of this information. I want you to see if you can remember what's missing. Okay, let's go. A frog begins life as what? What does it begin life as? As an egg. Well done. The female frog lays lots of eggs, and the eggs float on water. Fantastic. They float on water in a cluster. What are the eggs all encased in that sticks them all together? Jelly. Fantastic. We call the eggs when they are together. What are the eggs called all together? Frog spawn. Well done. The eggs will soon hatch into tadpoles. Brilliant. Great start. So what have we learned so far about this? What is this called? Frog spawn. Well done. So what have we learned so far about frog spawn? I want you to see if you can remember any facts about frog spawn, and I want you to tell them to somebody in the room or write them down on your piece of paper. What can you remember about frog spawn? Brilliant. So maybe you said something like, a frog's life begins as an egg. Frog spawn floats on top of the water, or frog spawn is lots of eggs in jelly. Maybe you remembered one of those things. Well done if you did. Let's learn some more information. Remember, your listening ears need to be on. We're starting to get to the point now where the tadpole is going to grow. So we need to think about what the tadpole has, what changes it has, and why they are important for the tadpole. When the tadpole hatches, it looks more like a fish than a frog. It does not have legs. It has gills that let it breathe underwater. The tadpole swims. It eats plants and algae from the water and grows for many weeks. During this time, the tadpole starts to grow lungs so it will be able to breathe out of the water. I'm going to cover up some of that information now. Let's see if we can remember what's missing. Okie dokie. When the tadpole hatches, it looks more like a fish than a frog. It does not have what? What hasn't it got? Legs. Fantastic. It has that let it breathe underwater. What does a tadpole have that lets it breathe underwater? Gills. Well remembered. That's one of our vocab blast words. The tadpole swims, it eats plants and algae, and it grows for many weeks. During this time, the tadpole starts to grow so it will be able to breathe out of the water. Fantastic. It starts to get lungs. But at the moment, it's got gills. What have we learned about this stage of the life cycle? What is this a picture of? A tadpole. Well done. So what have we learned about tadpoles? I want you to tell somebody in the room or write down a few facts that you can remember about tadpoles. It doesn't have any Think about that to start you off. So hopefully you've written something like it doesn't have any legs. Maybe you've also mentioned that it's got gills and that it lives underwater. Why does a tadpole have gills? That's the question I'm going to ask you. Why does a tadpole have gills? I want you to think about that question and I want you to answer it to somebody in the room. Why does it have gills? It has gills so that what? Why does it have gills? Fantastic. It has gills so that it can breathe underwater. So a tadpole develops, it grows gills so that it can breathe underwater. Let's read the next bit of information. The tadpole starts to grow 2 back legs. Now it can leap around instead of just swimming. It starts to get stronger. Although the tadpole is starting to look more like a frog, it still has a very long tail. The tail is important because it has food and goodness for it. The tadpole survives from the food stored in its tail. I'm going to cover up some of that information now. Let's see what we can. So what can we remember? The tadpole starts to grow 2 back what? What does it grow? Fantastic, it grows 2 back legs so that it can move around instead of just swimming. Although the tadpole is starting to look more like a frog, it still has a very long what? It has a very long tail. Well done. The tail is important because it has and goodness for it. What does it have in its tail? Food. Well done. The tadpole survives from the food stored in its tail. Fantastic. So the tail has food for the tadpole. What have we learnt about the tadpole? Well, this time it's not just a tadpole. What has it got? Fantastic. It's a tadpole with 2 legs. What have we learnt about the tadpole with 2 legs? Think about what facts you've learnt about that tadpole with 2 legs. Tell somebody in the room or write some of your ideas down. So maybe you've written that it starts to grow legs or its tail stores food. Well done. So why does a tadpole have... why does it have a tail? What does the tail need for? What is the tail needed for? It has a tail so that what? Why does it need a tail? Tell somebody in the room why a tadpole needs a tail. Brilliant, well done. A tadpole needs a tail so that it can have food to eat. Let's look at our new information sheet. Remember, keep those listening ears switched on because I'm going to ask you if you can remember the information afterwards. The tadpole grows 2 front legs and its long tail becomes shorter. The tadpole uses the nutrients stored in its tail as food. Until its tail is completely gone, it does not need anything else to eat. It hops out of the water and onto dry land for the first time. The frog is still very small. I don't think that should say frog, I think that should maybe say froglet. Let's see what you can remember. So the tadpole grows 2 what? Front legs, well done. And its long tail becomes shorter. The tadpole uses the stored in its tail. What's that word? It stores it in its tail and it uses it as food. It's one of our vocab blast words. Nutrients, well done. The tadpole uses the nutrients in its tail as food. It hops out of the water and onto for the first time. Where does it go for the first time? Fantastic, it goes onto dry land. So what do we know about the froglet? What do we know about the froglet? Tell somebody near you or write down a few facts that you've learnt about the froglet. Fantastic, so hopefully you've said that it still stores food in its tail, maybe you've also said that it's got lungs and that it goes on land. The question I want you to think about this time is why does the froglet have lungs? Why does the froglet have lungs? It doesn't have gills anymore, it's got lungs instead. Why? Tell somebody in the room. Brilliant, well done. So a froglet has lungs so that it can breathe outside of the water. And this is our last information sheet. This one is about the frog, the adult frog. The frog's tail will eventually disappear and it will start to eat insects instead of plants from the water. The young frog will grow for about 2 to 4 years to become an adult. The adult frogs lay their eggs and begin the life cycle again. Frogs have long legs to jump away quickly. They have long tongues to catch flies. See if you can remember that information. Fantastic, let's go. The frog's tail will eventually, what will happen to the frog's tail in the end? It will disappear, well done. The young frog will grow for about 2 to 4 years until it becomes an adult, fantastic. Adult frogs then lay their and begin the life cycle again. What do? They lay eggs, well done. Frogs have long legs to, what do they need their legs for? To jump, fantastic. And they have long tongues to do what? Catch insects, brilliant. So what have we learnt about frogs? I want you to tell somebody in the room or write down some facts that you can remember about the frog. Pause the video, off you go. So maybe you wrote that the tail disappears, that the frog has got long legs, or that it's got a long tongue. Those are some of the things that we learnt. So my last question for you is, why does a frog have long legs? Tell somebody in the room why the frog has long legs. Brilliant. The frog has got long legs so that it can jump. And I'm going to ask you a bonus question. Why does a frog have a long tongue? Why does the frog have a long tongue? Tell somebody in the room. Brilliant. The frog has a long tongue so that it can catch flies. Today's one-star challenge. You are going to write some facts about the different stages of the life cycle of a frog. You've got the word bank to help you, and you're going to use it to complete the sentences. So, floats on water. What floats on water? Lungs, gills, a stomach, a tail, legs, tadpoles, or frog spawn? Fantastic. Frog spawn floats on water. So I'm going to put that there. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to write that sentence out, remembering my capital letter and my full stop. And I'm going to do that for each of those sentences. The one-star challenge is on the school website. The two-star challenge, you're going to write at least 3 sentences. So I want to see at least 3. That means 3 or more. And you can use the communicating print to help you. Remember, we can circle things as we go along with our pencil to help us figure out what to write. A tadpole has legs, gills, or a tail. It has gills, well done. A tadpole has gills so it can breathe, jump, or eat. Breathe, fantastic. So I've circled what I'm going to say, and then I'm going to write my sentence with my capital letters and full stops. A tadpole has gills so it can breathe. Full stop. And that is 1 sentence, so I need to write 2 more. If you're not sure what these words are, think about it first, okay? That's a, so I can write a there to remind me. That's legs, because I can see the picture of legs. So it can. And then I've written out my full sentence, and you're writing 3 if you're doing the 2-star challenge. The 3-star challenge, you also need to write at least 3 sentences. You can write more, okay? And you're going to write about each of the different parts of the frog, okay? Each of the different stages of its life cycle. You can use the sentence starters to help you. So I'm going to look at the first one. Grows so it can. So I might say, a frog grows legs so it can jump. Full stop. And that's my first sentence, and I'm going to write 3 or more about the different stages of the life cycle. Remember, everybody, you need to think about what is it that changes and why is that important? Why does a frog need lungs? Why does a tadpole need gills? Think about those things and then write your sentences. And that's it for me. I look forward to seeing you after the half term. Bye, everybody.